last time we sang that one, Betty Brant was here.
Oh my gosh.
So there you go. That one takes me back to my childhood, 155%. So that's it. I'm there. It's good to be at WOW. Finally, my schedule calmed down a lot. So yay. I have been thinking about some conversations I have had in my life that have essentially made 90 degrees or 180 degree turns in my thought or in my path or whatever. And I just want to share these conversations with a group of people, and you're it. So there's no particular point except, well, there is a point. I'll get there. So one of the first conversations I remember having that was really significant was after we'd moved to El Paso. I was less than 6 years old. I feel like I had to be 4 or 5, I don't know, because we were still at the Church of God, which is a small, really evangelical church. Sue Doherty's dad grew up in the Church of God, so he and I shared that. There you go. That's a good way. Different views, but shared that. different experiences in it is what I should say. But a really evangelical church. I was young. My dad was the music minister there. And so we went one day to what I am guessing is the first wedding I attended. Because on the way home, I distinctly remember sitting in the car without my seatbelt, with my arms up on the front, talking to Mom and Dad. And I said, Mom and Dad, how come a man can't marry a man and a woman can't marry a woman? And they looked at each other like, you gonna take that? And they're just like, and my older siblings were in the car. I have no idea, and I don't think any of them remember it, but I remember it completely. And they just said, well, that's just not the way it is. And I said, oh, okay, I'm young. You can take that as an answer when you're young. But I remember that conversation. That was pretty significant. And with the way my thoughts have changed throughout, I'm like, I started out young, good for me. Another one that was of that kind of conversation, I grew up in the Methodist church. At this point, Dad's the music director there. And I'm assuming it was like my confirmation statement of faith. I don't remember what it was, but Mom was typing it up for me on her typewriter. Click, 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 click. And she got to this one sentence that I wrote, and she goes, now I know our pastor believes that, but you don't believe that. No. And it was, I said, I don't believe in hell. And she just came unglued. Oh, yes, you do. No, I don't. And I don't want to burst your bubble, but I still don't believe in hell. And that's we're not talking about the theology today. That's just, these are conversations that I distinctly remember. I'm going to back up a little bit because even though I put my little post-it notes in order, I skipped one. And this is a really neat experience, one of two really very cool experiences. So nobody believes this. I am an introvert. I have been an introvert my whole life. I get all my energy from being alone. Put me in a social setting that's not church related, and I am a wallflower. When I was a little girl, I was very much like Jacob, for those of you that know my Jacob, and you can't get him to talk. That was me, so I do have hope for him. My mom had to leave the house or whatever, and again, I was only I can tell you how old I was. I was 5 at this one, for sure. And my mom had to leave the house, and my sister was going to a neighborhood Bible study, okay, some woman had in her house. And I remember this, sitting in her living room, everybody's in a circle, I'm sitting next to my sister, and just kind of, tolerating whatever. And at the end, she had an altar call. She said, if you would like to ask Jesus to be in your heart, raise your hand. I raised my hand. To this day, I have no clue why I raised my hand. And this part's going to sound creepy, but nothing happened. So she took me up to her bedroom to pray afterwards. And she gave me a little book. I should have brought it because I still have the book that says my new birthday was May something in 1969. I don't know what made me raise my hand. I honest to goodness don't. About 2 years later, this isn't really a conversation, but it's an encounter with God. I believe this 100%. We were at a camp meeting. See, I grew up in this evangelical church, okay? And so Dad's the music director at the camp meeting. And they had an altar call after, and I had some friend that I had met there. And we went up and we were kneeling, actually on the front pew because the altar's full. The altar rail's full. We're kneeling at this front pew, and I'm just kneeling there, and somebody taps me on the shoulder. And I turn around. There ain't nobody there. There ain't nobody there. And I thought, well, that's really weird, or whatever. And later on that evening, I overheard adults talking and said, oh yeah, I felt the touch of God. It just felt like God just touched my arm. And I was like, oh, kind of cool. So that was another conversation. Didn't really have I just wanted to share it. When I was about 8, my friend up the street, her name's Darlene, and she had a little brother named Georgie. We always played together. And they wanted me to come spend the night. You know, a couple of us come spend the night, which was great because her parents were out of town and the maid would be there. But none of the real adults knew that this was happening. I told my mom, yeah, the Fairchilds know about it. It's fine. Okay. So I went up and spent the night. Everything was great. Got up in the morning, came back home. Yeah, got away with that one. Woo, woo. Phone rings. Hi, Sue. It's Mrs. Fairchild. Can I speak to your mom? Said, can I talk to her first? And she said, yes, you can. Just have her call me when you're done. And so I went and fessed up to Mom, scared to death. And Mom did one of the best things to make up for not believing in hell and all that other stuff. She took me to my bedroom, and we knelt by my bed, and she prayed, and she asked Jesus to forgive me like she had forgiven me. And it never happened again. Never. And I clearly remember that. That was a pretty deep conversation. That's called grace. That is absolutely called grace. We're going to sing a song about grace, except about amazing love. How can it be? And it's in that book. And I don't know what number it is. It's over on the other page. It's at 3102. Just turn the page from where you were. Grab a quick drink, wet the whistle. Okay. Talked about that. talked about that. Awesome. College. College. Went to a Methodist college. Majored in church music. Majored with a piano emphasis. They didn't have a string group. I'd wanted to major in violin at that point in my life, but they didn't have a string orchestra. And I didn't want to be a singer. That's coming up. That story will continue in a minute. So I was piano. And besides that, I had found the college because of a music camp, and I fell in love with the piano teacher. She just was a hoot, literally a hoot. And so she was my confidant there, my guide. Had a really good time in college. She called me into her office one day, and she had to reprimand me because when I was taking like some voice lessons or whatever, apparently I was asking the question, why? Like, stand up straight. Well, why? Take a deep breath. Well, why? And it was taken as why, but I meant why. And I was trying to learn. And so she was honest with me. And first of all, it alerted me that what comes out of my mouth, what my body language says actually affects other people, and they can take things wrong. But it also, I was so grateful that she was honest with me so I could fix it and quit making people avoid me, so to speak. So that was a really cool conversation. And in one of we took Bible classes. We took theology classes. Don't ask me what class this was. But we were talking at that point, maybe Texas was coming up. Texas, sorry, I don't go there anymore. Was talking about the death penalty. And we're college students, and so we're going to solve this issue. And what do we think about the death penalty? Are we for it? Are we against it? Why is it there? And we had a great conversation about it. We didn't come to a consensus. Of course, nobody does. But that summer, I was summer youth directing at a church in El Paso, and the youth choir, and then of course the youth director, got to go on a trip. We went up to Mount Rushmore from El Paso. It was kind of a big trip. As we're coming back down, we stopped and spent the night in Wichita, Kansas, where my grandfather was living in an assisted living place. And I arranged to have dinner with my grandfather. My grandfather grew up in Indian Territory in Oklahoma. And he even told the story of taking the Conestoga wagon over to Colorado. They weren't excited about what they found there, so they went back. Lived through the Depression. When my dad was just a wee tot, it was him and his sister. When my dad was just a wee tot, my grandmother wanted a piano to teach the kids piano. And my grandfather, who was always looking for a job, never really got stuck in all that, saved up enough money. For $50, he bought a piano. And every time I play, or every time I look at my family and all of us play, I'm like, it's a good investment, that $50. He had an 8th grade education. He did work for Shell Oil. Very honest, loving man who never quit reading the Bible. I remember him in our living room. I'm like, why are you still reading? Haven't you memorized that thing already? Now I understand a little more why I know why he keeps reading it. It's new every time, by the way. My John class, we're all blown away. We've all read that so many times. And some of us actually haven't read it. I had a member in the class last night who said, because we got right up to Holy Week before Holy Week, and she said that for the first time in her life, she actually read the Holy Week story in the Bible and was just blown away by all of it. So anyway, open them up. I digress there. So my grandfather. So that's the person to ask. What about the death penalty, Grandpa? And he says, well, what's the loving thing to do? What are you talking about? Well, Jesus says it's all about love. What is the loving thing to do? That changed my life. That changed my life because it's going to vary. It's going to vary. As my mom gets to the end of life, Is the loving thing to keep her alive, or is the loving thing to let her go? What's the loving thing? What's the best thing for that person? Changed my life. So, let's sing a song. This time, we're going to sing 21, it's in the Black Book, 2152. 2152. Before I go on with the rest of my story, conversation. We have one prayer request here, prayers for Barb, who's having a surgical consult today. I also lift up prayers for Augie. He's suffering, he has a cancer. That's all I feel comfortable telling you that. And it takes a lot of Tony's time and Ann's time, and it's uncomfortable. So, and he's ready for assisted living, but he's not ready for assisted living. So we've got that going on. So, and my mom's doing okay. So.
Where's Mike's door?
Mike's door.
Gratefulness for this group.
Continued prayers for you as life has changed. Life has changed. It's still good though. Life is still good. It'll get better and better. Some good things. I'm really excited about my Bible study class because they have become a community, and a lot of them are people that are a little bit on the periphery of the church. So it's nice that they have a place. And I'm also excited, and I'm like the big promoter for Saturday night worship because it too has become a community within itself. And one of our members, John Ross, maybe you know John, he also is at the point where his family is helping him make a change. Mm-hmm. And he'll probably be moving to Nebraska, where family wants him. So, good. But he's afraid. He's very scared.
Prayers for, there's a meeting here Saturday. It's an all-day meeting. As we look at the future of the church, and it's being led by our new pastor, who's coming in July. So excited about that, a little nervous about that. Just prayers that God's Spirit is leading us.
Yeah, they need to have Post-it notes. Let's have conversations. Let's pray. God, you are the God of the universe, and yet you know each one of us, and you touch us. You touch our hearts, you touch our bodies, you touch our minds, you touch our families. You hug us, you poke us, you're involved more than we even know. So thank you for remembering us. And thank you for loving us. Thank you for bringing new life, a life of great depth, a life of joy. Help us to remember that. You've heard our concerns this morning, and you know those that weren't spoken. And we lift all of them up to you because you pay attention to us. and we're so grateful. Keep us walking in your path. We pray this in your name. Amen. So then I got to seminary. 2 years later than I expected, graduated from college, and worked in a church. Okay, I'll tell you this conversation. This was a hard conversation. I worked in the church over the summer. My friend, if you were at my wedding, you remember the funny preacher? That guy. And he hired me to be the summer music director because he was new at this little church, and he's like, I know that they can have a music program. Can you just show us, and then we're going to hire somebody in the fall when you go off to school. Great. So I got there, and I was having a blast, just graduated from college, and as I'm working there, they aren't having luck finding anybody. And okay, I'll stay, I get it. So I stayed in Odessa, Texas. Don't ever go there. I've been there, I've seen the lack of mountaintop. Don't go there. There are great people there, but just drive by. And when I was directing and leading the choirs, I had been majoring in piano. I had had some voice lessons. I sang in the choir, although I accompanied the choir more. And I realized I don't know how to really teach a choir how to sound better. I need a little bit more. So when I went off to seminary to get a master's in church music, I switched my major from piano to voice, just so I could learn that. The one thing I didn't tell you that Holly Hughes in college made me do was give a piano recital every year, even as a freshman. Usually you just have senior piano recitals. The music school is so small that I think she was like, yay, we have a student that's giving a recital, woohoo. So I had to give it every year, and I would get up there and I just would have no nails. I was so nervous. I just didn't enjoy it. Really just didn't enjoy it. So when I got to seminary, I had switched to voice, and God put right smack dab in front of me, by virtue of a hysterectomy from my first teacher that was given to me, Lloyd Mims. Lloyd was a huge man. He used to play bass, but he switched to voice later in his life. And he married a woman who was starring, leading at the Metropolitan Opera. It was kind of cool. Yes, you can touch me. I have met her. I got hints from her, yes. And we were in voice lessons, and he says stand up straight. I didn't say why. I just did it. And it'd be like, nel cor più non mi sento. And he's like, Sue, like sing, really get connected. No, why don't you? I said, well, because all those singers that I played for in college, and I had to tell them that the next note was the same as the one they just sang, said singers are just stupid. They just always put those big scarves around their neck. I can't have milk for a week before I'm going to sing. Oh, I'm like, they're just stupid. They don't know how to read music. They don't know how to count. Jane will tell me that I'm right. This is the thought. This is the thought of instrumentalists to singers. And I said, I don't want to be a stupid singer. And he goes, then be a smart singer. Are there such things? But it's so simple. I'd never thought of it. So I gave a little bit more. Well, got time, I had to give a recital. So I was nervous, no fingernails. I go out and I have to sing a Bach aria. And I have my flute over here and my cello and my harpsichord accompanying me, and I'm scared to death, and my parents are there, and I finish singing and they clap. And it flipped. That minute, I will never forget that. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is my music. Singing. And it was really important. Why don't you be a smart singer? If he had never said that, I may never have given myself over to that. I like to sing. I don't know if you know that. I even got a laugh from Zoom. Woohoo! That's pretty funny. Okay, those two are both gone. The other thing then that happened when I was at seminary, I graduated in 91. So in the late 80s, AIDS was going around. There's a lot of talk about homosexuality was kind of coming into the norm. And the Baptist seminary, you can imagine what they thought about all that. And they actually had kicked a guy out because of that. And we were struggling, kind of the same question as the capital punishment thing, you know, where is it? What are we supposed to do? And I hadn't come to any decision. I didn't know. I remembered the conversation in the car with my parents, you know, how come a man can't marry a man and a woman can't marry a woman? So God sent me to Washington, D.C., to Adams Morgan, which is a highly gay part of the city, where my sister lived, not gay. But my sister was working at the National Institute of Health as the right-hand person in AIDS research under Tony Fauci.
Oh, wow.
I got a wow from Zoom, too. Keep it coming. I'm enjoying that. And so I was there to sightsee the city and so forth and visit my sister. But she had to work one day. So she said, my friend Mike is going to take you around the city. Now, Sue, he has full-blown AIDS. But he's fine. You're going to be fine with him. So I trusted my sister. I mean, I'm like, I have to trust my sister. Trusted the science behind it and all that stuff. So I spent the day with Mike. The only thing I remember was just a memory that came to me last year when we were in DC, is that I took the metro with him. But that's all I remember that we did in the city that day. I remember, though, going back to his apartment. And I remember walking in his apartment earlier in the day going, there's AIDS everywhere. Am I going to be okay? You know, I mean, I was very afraid. So he had a pool on the top of his building and said, let's go swimming. Okay. So he got in the pool, and I was thinking, is it going to be safe to be in the pool with somebody who has AIDS? I trust my sister. I got in the pool. And we started talking about things, and what usually happens when people find out you work for the church or whatever, it turns to God. He grew up Catholic. He was, of course, shunned by his family, shunned by his church for being a gay man. And he says to me, he says, Sue, it's all about what's in here. It's really from what's in here. And I remember the light bulb coming on. I remember that moment of, I have no idea what it's like to walk in his shoes. And I can't even begin to pass judgment on that. I cannot. Mike told my sister that conversation was one of the most meaningful things to him. And he died soon after. And we still talk about Mike Szymanczyk. I lift his name up because he's having a party in heaven. He has understood now acceptance more than he ever did on this earth. Those conversations have just absolutely changed my life. I had a conversation that I don't have a Post-it note for last night with my sister, who is one of those highly evangelical people. And she was bemoaning something she heard on the radio yesterday. Some guy was saying, yeah, I used to go to church all the time. I knew the Bible and all that stuff, but I don't do that anymore. I said, man, now it's just about love. And she's like, yeah, just about love. I said, it is just about love. We lose him? Did I talk too long?
No.
Oh. I said it is just about love. Again, back to the Bible study. In John 15, Jesus says anywhere between 13 and 15, Jesus says anywhere from once to 10 times, obey my commandment, love one another. He doesn't say obey my commandment and pass judgment on somebody else. Or he doesn't even say obey my commandment and believe only in me and be saved and go be baptized. He says obey my commandment, love one another. That's it. My sister said, oh, I have to, when my husband comes, he's going to have, he's going to have to reply to you. And, she couldn't even argue it. He can argue all he wants, but I'm going by what Jesus said. She's like, but Jesus said, take up your cross. I said, that's fine. And love one another. You have to only believe in me. You have to follow Jesus' way and love one another. Well, Jim's going to have to talk to you. Don't ever let her see this. This is a different sister, by the way. This was not Tony Fauci's
Not the
sister.
NIH.
Oh, no.
Not the NIH.
Tony Fauci's sister. Okay, I'm sorry. I will quit eventually. Another hard conversation. If you ever meet her, don't tell her I told you this. But she went through years of alcoholism and would not admit it to anybody. And I know she and her husband had knockout, drag-out fights. They never talked to us about that, but we all knew. She came to our house over COVID. She spent the night at our house. She woke up the next morning. She went to the bathroom and she couldn't get off the toilet well. She thought she was having a stroke. I knew what was going on. I called her husband and I said, you got to come get her. Something's wrong. You got to take her to the hospital. She took her to the hospital. Her blood alcohol level was 0.4, something or other. That didn't stop her. She came, but I told her after that, I said, you cannot come to my house unless you're sober. You cannot come. She showed up again. She was not sober. We had proof because I had someone else taste her drink, and vodka. So as she's leaving, I'm like, you broke the rules. You were supposed to come. You weren't supposed to come with that. And she left, and I don't know what the best thing to do, whether to let her go or to call the cops on her. I let her go. Praise the Lord, nobody got hurt. She ended up in a ditch. She got a DUI. She is a deacon in her church. She's in a Bible study. She's completely sober since 2020. And that was really hard to tell my sister. But I'm so glad that God gave Tony and me the strength to do that, and that she listened to the voice that was calling her to live a better life than what she had. So there's lots of times that God has talked to me in my life, through people, through pokes. A lot of you have heard me talk about God pokes that I get, through Bible study, and through my music and worship planning. Those are really great ways that God talks to me. What conversations have you had in your life that have changed you? Are you grateful for those conversations? Have you had a time to think about that and say thank you? What conversations are you having with your family members, with your little Annies or your Nairas or your Lulus that's going to change their lives, and show who Jesus is? Those are just my thoughts in all of that. So we're going to close today by singing a song that, again, the last time we sang it, Betty Brandt actually introduced it to us. It's in the Green Book. Like, Betty Brandt introduced us to a Green Book? Yes, because it's an old gospel song. And it, ouch, is number, 3107.
I once was
each other.
No, you know we should sing?
What?
This is my command. You know, John
Oh yeah,
Wetland's song.
John Heilman's song. This is my commandment to love one another like I love you. Like I love you. This is my commandment that you love one another like I love you. Like I love you.
And then he goes on to know great love.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I just, John, no, Wheelman.
Oh, there. That, I can't
Wheelman,
picture
from
that.
our church.
No,
No,
did
John
he write it?
Wheelman.
Oh yeah, he wrote it.
He wrote it. Yeah, he wrote it, and it's such a good song. All through everything, I always think of that. To go, if we
Bye,
just
Susan.
to